succinct as possible. There's a lot going on in this country and this state and much to discuss. We have the governor of New Hampshire in studio, and so we want to turn as quickly as possible to Governor Kelly Ayotte. Thank you so much for joining us this morning on Close Up.
It's great to be with you, Adam. Thank you so much.
So, Governor, there's a lot of just raw, intense feeling in our politics right now, first and foremost because of the brutal assassination of Charlie Kirk. But then it seems that rather than taking stock and taking reflection in this moment for the country, that we're just getting more and more divided as a nation. As a leader, what is the answer right now to all of this intensity?
Well, the answer is that we need to come together. First of all, I think there's so much more that unites us as Americans than divides us. And New Hampshire, of all places, is a place we can do that. Our First in the Nation primary, think about all the political discourse we have here, the town halls, the direct interaction we have with people running for president, the direct questions, the real interaction with voters. I just think New Hampshire is the place where we can show the nation that, yes, we can disagree with each other, we can do it respectfully, we can have open debates, and we don't need violence, no violence. I mean, what happened to Charlie Kirk is outrageous, and my hope is that we take the lesson from this and understand we have a great country, and we want to make sure that we can openly debate ideas, and that is what our country stands for. That's what New Hampshire is all about.
You know, the president and the vice president have both assigned blame for this assassination beyond just the shooter to a broad left-wing extremist political movement. Do you agree?
Well, I think, unfortunately, any kind of political violence on either side of the aisle is outrageous, and it's wrong, and it should never happen. And so what I would say at this moment is, okay, let's have the debates on our ideas and what we believe in, but let's do it peacefully. Let's do it in a respectful way. Let's do it in a way that, if you think about Charlie Kirk going on a campus and just being open about his views, let's make sure that we have a safe environment that allows everyone to do that, and make sure that that's the message our young people get.
The White House has said the appropriate response here is a broad crackdown on NGOs, organizations, advocacy groups that may share similar ideology to the shooter. Should that happen if there is no criminal legal nexus between them?
I think that here in New Hampshire, it's about open discourse. And I mentioned the First in the Nation primary, but whatever your viewpoint is, I want you to be able to project it openly, respect people, never make someone else feel threatened. Understand people. How about some listening to understand where people are coming from? And that's what I think is the solution to where we are. I think that's what we are as a nation. And I want people to think about that when they think about what Charlie Kirk stood for and how open he was with his viewpoints and being willing to engage people peacefully. That is where we are. So regardless of the group, there are plenty of groups I disagree with, but they have a First Amendment right. We want to make sure we respect that right.
You yourself were recently targeted by violent threats. That individual is in custody and facing charges. How much concern do you have right now for your own safety?
Well, I can tell you I have such confidence in law enforcement in our state. They thoroughly investigated that matter, as they would if anyone is threatened. And so I believe that our law enforcement does a great job. And I can tell you this, it's so important to me as governor to be accessible to people, to be open to people. I'm going to continue to do that. That's the New Hampshire way. And I interact with so many wonderful people in New Hampshire every single day. And that's who our state is. And our law enforcement will make sure that if someone is going to commit a threat, they take care of it. But I want people to know I'm the governor of the state of New Hampshire. I'm accessible to them, and I'm going to continue to listen to the people.
And that's one of the core values of this state. You don't see the governor of New Hampshire rolling out with sort of a phalanx of state police around them like you do in other states. You know, the same goes for the State House itself.
We have a citizen legislature, right. Very open.
It's a conscious choice. Security is obviously cared for and attended to, but the choice is to make it more open, more accessible to the public within reason. You know, given our current reality, does that need to be reassessed at all, do you think?
Well, I think obviously we have the state police, we have the security at the State House. They're always looking at any potential issues that come up, threats, and the legislature and the Speaker of the House and the Senate President, obviously they'll take a look and make sure that their members are protected. I know they care deeply about that. But again, the foundation of New Hampshire is open, accountable, accessible government. And so I'm confident that whatever steps are taken to protect elected officials, we will always make sure that we are open, we're accessible, and that we're willing to engage in discourse, political discourse about people's viewpoints and listen to people as well.
Let's step into another discussion, or I should probably say debate about freedom right now. What's your perspective on what's going on between the Trump administration and late night talk show host Jimmy Kimmel, who's been suspended apparently under some pressure from the FCC?
Well, I can tell you that I don't watch Jimmy Kimmel because I'm trying to get to sleep by then. But so whatever that debate is, that'll play out. And whatever Jimmy said, the administration said. But I can tell you here, what we're going to focus on is how can we have open dialogue? How can we make sure that people can speak freely? And how are we going to make sure that whatever your viewpoint, that it's peaceful, it's respectful. And again, these things that play out on the late night, I wish I could say I was awake, but I get up early and I got a lot of work to do for the people of New Hampshire.
Not to dwell on this too much, but Kimmel essentially misrepresented the alleged motivations of Charlie Kirk's assassin in one of his monologues in the process of making jokes. And then you had the FCC chairman say in an interview, and this is a quote, "We can do this the easy way or the hard way. These companies can find ways to take action against Kimmel, or there's going to be additional work for the FCC ahead." That seems to be a pretty bare-knuckle approach to government power. Are you okay with that?
Well, listen, I think that people should be honest and truthful and not misrepresent other people's viewpoints. That's important. How that plays out in the FCC, that's something that I'm sure will be addressed in Washington, and others will debate it. Let's talk about what we can do here in New Hampshire. Let's be the example. Let's make sure that we're honest about people, we're honest ourselves, but that we can have honest debate. That's what I think this is all about.
Let's bring this back to state matters and another public safety concern. This is the day when the new bail reform law takes effect. This was a top priority for you on the campaign trail, then in the first months of your governorship. I think one of the first big bills you signed as governor. Take us through the work that has been done on the implementation of this law to make sure that it actually delivers on improving that pretrial system.
This bail reform fix is so important because I've heard so many, listen, look what just happened, awful, to Marisol Fuentes. So tragic. And that person should have never been out to commit that murder. But in addition to that, I heard the stories about the police officers being shot at, people being assaulted, and by individuals who are out on bail that should have never been out on bail. So that's why I pushed so hard to get this fixed. And we did get it fixed. And now it's going into place, thank God. And the Attorney General has issued guidance to prosecutors, law enforcement, to educate them on what the new law is. But I can tell you, Adam, that this is a top priority of mine, that this new law be implemented properly, that the judicial system, as well as the prosecutors, defense lawyers, everyone knows what the standards are now, because the standards have changed, and we're going to end that revolving door. Because we have the safest state in the nation, but this was making us less safe. And it was creating real cases of victims who were suffering, who should not have suffered.
Essentially now, violent offenders will have to go before a judge before they can be released. But, obviously in the prior situation, you had bail commissioners, you had the former bail magistrates who might have taken a more sort of let them all out approach. You could certainly have a judge with that same philosophical disposition. So how are you going to find accountability in the judiciary when that is a separate branch?
Well, one of the things we've done in this law is the standard is what it should be, a probable cause standard. Before there was a heightened standard, and it wasn't the right standard in terms of protection and bail, so I'm very glad that that has changed. And when it comes to accountability, if you think about it, that magistrate system was a failed system. I was against it. That's why I wanted to eliminate it. And judges applying a law that is much stronger, I expect them to apply the law. If they don't apply the law, that's why you have an open dialogue about it. And I can tell you that as governor, I'm going to make sure that the judges that I nominate are judges that are going to follow the law, and that is what their job is. So that's very important to me.
Yeah, that move in the evidentiary standard is probably going to be very important.
The move in the evidentiary standard is probably one of the most important pieces of that bail law. And by the way, the evidentiary standard that it's moved to was the one it was before. It is the standard evidentiary standard. Why they ever tried to make a higher burden of proof for dangerousness when dangerousness is so important in protecting the public, I'll never understand.
Yeah, it was a sometimes absurd situation where mini trials would play out
Correct.
over why someone would have to be just held for dangerousness.
Right, and you know, the end result was you saw it in case again where dangerous people were on our streets.
Right. Is the logical next step, though, you know, if you have a judge who is, you know, granting pretrial release in, say, 90% of cases, is it important to get some statistics in there so you can see and hold judges accountable?
This is really important, and in fact, one of the items we just had before the Governor and Council is keeping statistics, especially in the areas of domestic violence, so that we know exactly how is this law being implemented. Are there people that are being released that shouldn't be released? And I would like to see that kind of data across the criminal justice system, not only for the domestic violence cases, which are incredibly important, but also, you know, violence, assault, rape, you know, child abuse, all those things. We need to make sure that we understand what the statistics are and that the system is working. You know, Adam, we're ranked the safest state in the nation, but that remains that we have to have constant vigilance, right? We take that for granted, and we won't have that moniker anymore. So we're never going to take that for granted.
All right, Governor Kayleigh Ea'a, don't go anywhere. We're going to continue this conversation. We'll be right back.